Hi, welcome to our behaviour clinic here in November. Gosh, time is flying. My name is Anisa Lewis and I am a positive parenting coach. For those of you on the call a bit earlier, before I hit the record button, my background is in teaching and education. I started out life as an early years specialist, so 0 to 8-year-olds, and then since I started my business a few years ago, I've specialised up into our young people, into tweens and teens as well. So about 8 years ago, I relocated my family from Surrey, where I was a deputy head of operations for a school, up to West Yorkshire, and I haven't looked back. I've started my business because I am absolutely and completely passionate about helping you to raise happy and confident children, no matter what is going on for you and your young people. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm also a mother, which I think is important for you to know. So I have survived the toddler years, I've lived through the tween years, and I'm just about clinging on to my sanity through the teenage years. So she is 16, just started sixth form. So that's where I come from. She is also neurodiverse. We have just received a autistic diagnosis for her, and she suffers with anxiety. So there is lots of stuff that I talk about with parents in my coaching, in my clinics, in the work that I do with corporations, that I'm actually putting into practice in my own family because of the experience I have with my daughter and what her needs and what she needs. So you're not here to hear about my daughter, though. You are here to hear about behaviour and what's going on for you and your families. If you're listening to this on the replay and anything comes up that you want to discuss, just ping me an email, hello@anisalewis.com, and I will absolutely get back to you. Likewise, if you're listening live and you would like to ask a question, please pop it into the chat box. It does move quite fast, and so I will do my best to come back and look for questions. But if I haven't been able to answer your question specifically, again, pop me an email, or I offer a free call to everybody who wants one. So you are very welcome to book in to have a chat with me on a free call. The other thing I would just like you to do, a bit of a heads up, is by the end of the call, I want you to put into the chat box or ping me an email if you're listening on the replay, just something that's resonated with you today, something that you think, oh, actually, I want to think about that some more, or I'm going to try that, or I'm going to go away and have a chat to my kids about that. So anything like that, have a think, and then you can pop it into the chat box at the end when I ask you to. I'll probably talk for about 20-ish minutes, and then just at the end, I will let you know what I've got coming up, what you can do to work with me, and other things like that. But let's crack on now. Okay, so when we look at our children and their behaviour, I think we need to start off with, where are your children in their development? Because there is certain points in a child's development where they are going to be more temperamental. I'm thinking of toddlers, where they are going to be pushing the boundaries more. I'm thinking of teenagers, where they are going to be experimenting more. I'm thinking of tweens with their independence and trying to do things that perhaps they're just not quite ready for. So I think when we look at behavior, we would be remiss if we didn't take into account where your children are at. And as I said, there are natural points where your children are going to be pushing boundaries. So we've got the 2-3-year-olds. For toddlers, we've got when all those hormones starts kicking in, which is in the tweens. Now, my experience as a teacher, I was, as an early years teacher, I did reception year 1 and 2 for years, but they put me into year 3. I don't know, in their wisdom, if they thought that was a good idea. But anyway, into year 3 I went, and it was really interesting, the behaviour of the children I taught in year 2, and then when they went into the year 3. And so I think around the age of 7, 8, 9 is when the tween years start hitting, and you will notice that your children aren't as sweet and as lovely as you thought they were, because their hormones are surging and they're trying new things. And then, as I say, the next point of pushing boundaries and having no off button is the teen years. And I think that is well documented, what a roller coaster that could be. But just on the teen years, I know some of you aren't there yet, but you will be quicker than you know, is all I can say, is that developmentally in their brain, they don't have sort of an off button, as I mentioned. And so they don't have the natural developmental capacity to think through consequences, to think through what might happen if they take that behavior or that action. Yes, it can be learned. Yes, it can be taught. Yes, it can be discussed. But actually, as a part of the brain, it hasn't fully developed yet, and it doesn't fully develop into sort of like the late teens, early 20s. So have a think about that next time your child has just decided, I don't know, to jump off the roof of the shed or something like that, which you just don't think is a good idea. They don't physically know the rational thought behind why that is not a good idea. So I thought I would throw that in. I think I did mention if your child is on a neurodiverse journey, whether you've been assessed or whether you haven't been assessed, that also plays a part in the behavior that you are seeing within your families. Someone mentioned in their questionnaire that they've been on a waiting list for neurodiversity assessment for 4 years. Can that person reach out to me again? Because I'm not sure if you're aware, and this is not what this conversation is about, but you have under the NHS the right to choose pathway. And if you don't know about that, ping me a message and I can give you some more information. I think also when it comes to behavior, we need to think about the overstimulation that our children are exposed to these days. School is a very stimulating environment. Nurseries, childcares are very stimulating environments. And sometimes your children have become overstimulated, and when they're overstimulated, they can't articulate that they're overstimulated, so you see behavior that you see showing up. Oh my goodness, someone's just written in the chat box that the CAMS in Kingston is a 3 to 4 year waiting list. I know up here in West Yorkshire it is 2 to 2.5 years. Explore with your GP right to choose pathway. That's all I'm going to say on that. Okay, the other thing that can cause behavior issues within your child is if you're expecting too little of them or you're expecting too much of them and they can't meet it because of their developmental needs or where they are in their childhood. And so just have a think about that. So I know as an early childhood teacher, I had one of my early learning goals was to get children to be able to follow and remember one instruction. And that actually, the early years is quite a chunk of a child's development. Yet there we are in the morning saying to our children, get your coat on, get your bag, where's your water bottle, put your shoes on, we need to leave now, we need to leave now. Too much information. And so it can be even just simple things like that can lead to overwhelm and behavior issues within our children. The other thing that I would say around behavior is that we have two brains, and I love talking about brains, and you will have heard this if you've heard me talking before, but obviously we have one brain, we don't have two brains, but we have different parts to our brain, and one of our parts is our thinking brain, where we can have logical thought, where we can make decisions, where we can have fun, we can do all of that kind of stuff. But when behavior issues set in, it is most likely that your child has pinged into their primitive brain, which is a part of the brain just down here, going down into your spine, into that column at the base of the head. And it is responsible for lots of things, but one of its purposes is the survival instinct. So what your children are doing when they're potentially acting up, when they are doing something that you just think, where on earth did that come from? Maybe it's full of emotion, because I think emotion and behavior go very much hand in hand. It could be that they're acting from their primitive brain, which can see a child acting from a fight, a flight, or a freeze response. And I would say most of the time, if you are seeing behavior that you are not computing, not liking, not whatevering, it's because they're in fight mode. You know, they know that something is going down, they know they can't control it, so they are going at it in this fight mode, which is the behavior you are then seeing. To get them out of their primitive brain and back up into their thinking brain is interesting, and it involves something called the 3 Ps, which is positive thinking, positive conversations, positive talking, interactions, and then positive activity. Now, 9 times out of 10, when a child is in a red mist moment, getting them to think positively or having a positive interaction with them is quite hard. So that's where you would be employing something along the lines of a positive activity, whether it is just offering them a hug, whether it is putting them in a safe place, whether it is trying to do some suggesting, what if we do this, what about this, until they have calmed down and regulated enough to get back into their thinking brain. Obviously, you know, if in getting them to do some good breathing and all that kind of stuff helps, great. But in my experience, if a child is in a heightened behavioral state, they're not really going to be willing to take a pause and take a breath. So just have a think about the primitive brain. So in the chat box, let me know, can you recognize when you are seeing some behavior within your children that it is the primitive brain talking, that fight, flight, or freeze response, rather than your child's thinking brain? Okay, so that's great. So that is resonating. This next point is an interesting one when we're looking about the behavior of our children, but it's actually starting with you. And I'm not saying that you, although you may have thought it and may have actually wanted to do this, that you're going to then have a tantrum in the middle of Waitrose because you are completely overwhelmed. However, my thought process is that you can't pour from an empty cup. So whether you are a pastoral lead in a school, whether you are responsible for well-being in a corporate setting, whether you are just doing the best you can by your children, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if your cup is empty, you are not going to be giving the best to your kids. And you know, life happens. There are ebbs and flows, there are ups and downs, and I'm not asking you to be Mary Poppins 24 hours a day. That is not possible either. However, you need to feed yourself first with what is, whether it's self-care in the terms of just going out for a run, whether it's fueling your body with better food, drinking less alcohol, whether it's a catch up with a friend because you just need to touch base with someone, whatever it looks like for you, don't put your needs at the bottom of the pile. And I think that is where I will leave that one. I think it's also interesting as a parent to reflect on how you were parented. Is that coming out in how you parent your children when they are displaying behavior that you are not liking, or that you are shocked at, or you are wondering where it's come from? Likewise, what type of parent are you? Are you a helicopter parent who's buzzing around them, trying to do everything for them, not allowing them to make mistakes, not allowing them to sort of have some control? Or are you so laid back, like quite a lot of the Australians? So I grew up part of my existence in Australia, hence why my accent is a bit confused. Are you so laid back like an Australian that your kids could do anything and there's no boundaries around them? Kids like boundaries. Kids like to know where the goalposts are so they can work within that. There is a happy compromise, but I think some reflection is a really good thing to do on how you parent. And then the only other thing I'm thinking of is consistency is key when we are looking at dealing with behavior issues within your family. And so if you are trying something and then 10 minutes later you are trying something else, and then 2 days later you're trying something else with your children, it's not going to stick and it's not going to work, and your children are going to be so confused and they're not going to know how to deal with the parent that's coming at them with this new skill because they've just listened to a really good talk by Anisa and she said for them to try this. So I would say consistency. And this is where I encourage parents to focus on one thing. Focus on one thing, not to let other things slip, but it's not to go at them, because we're trying to grow, develop well-rounded children. And if we are constantly bickering at them because they've said something, they've put something somewhere, they haven't picked up something, they haven't done what we've asked and all the rest of it, it's like you're the woodpecker pecking at them and they just don't know which way is up and which way they can win. So consistency, what I would say is, if you're seeing something that you really want to change within your family, pick one thing, focus on that, get what you want, see the momentum grow, see the change, and then you start with a new one thing. I think also, just before I move off us as the parenting role model side of things, is, do you have a default behavior as a parent? Now, this is an interesting question. So default behaviors as parents. So this is when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when your children are bombarding you with overstimulation and all the rest of it. Do you shout? Do you give a nice lecture? Do you go quiet and retreat? You know, what is your default behavior as a parent when you are dealing with the behavior of your children? Are you then seeing that reflected in the behavior of your children? So, for example, if you're a shouter, are your children then shouting back at you? I don't know the answer to that question because I'm not within your homes. I know my default behavior as a parent is I'm a lecturer. I like to ensure that my child knows absolutely everything that I've learned in my 47 years of being on this planet, and I like to give it to her, and I just like to keep going until I know she's completely switched off. That's my default. And so have a think about that when you're dealing with the behavior from your children. I will also say here that all behavior is communication, and it's a bit like with the emotions. It's the tip of an iceberg. So what is going on at the tip of the iceberg is actually not what's happening underneath the surface. And so we have to really be curious, and we have to notice what is going on. Is it a particular day of the week that a child is getting overwhelmed, such as, I don't know, especially in secondary school, have they got a set of subjects on a particular day or in a 2-week cycle that sets them off? Is it when they're younger that, I don't know, I don't know, because I'm not in your homes, but have a think about that. So all behavior is communication, and I just ask you to stick up a curiosity radar to think about what that could be. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they overstimulated? That's sort of where I start, and then we go from there. Okay, I'm very much about connecting with your children before you have to correct them. So what I want us to do is, by part of this curiosity cycle, is to come in 3 steps potentially before the behavior occurs. And this can be done with a child at any age, whether you're in secondary school, whether your child is still in nursery, or whether your child is in the cocoon in the middle in primary school. It's about noticing, it's about listening, and it's about curiosity about what is going on. So, and it's about how we can connect with them so we don't get to the point of having to tell them off because of the behavior that we're seeing. So a really lovely way to do this is love languages. Let me know with an emoji whether you've heard of love languages, whether you follow love languages, whether this is something new to you. There's a body of research from a gentleman called Gary Chapman out of the States, and he believes that all of us like to receive love in one of 5 ways. So it is physical touch, words of affirmation, so praise and acknowledgement, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. Usually gifts is in association with one of those other ones. So that's gifts, acts of service, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. Now, he's written some books on it. So there's one here for children. There's one here for teenagers. They're quite easy reads, and they give you ideas once you've identified it. What I will do is, in the email that I'll send out, I can send you a quiz that you can do for yourself. There is one that young people, like 8-year-olds and above, can do. The stuff for 8-year-olds and below is they give you little activities. What I would say to you is you can do the child's one on behalf of your younger child. Just do the child's quiz. But what's interesting is that once you know what it is, you then feed it. So for example, my daughter's is quality time and physical touch. Now, if I was to rank mine, physical touch would be number 5. I think it's from being an early years teacher for so many years and just being constantly touched and sat on. And anyway, so yeah, mine, physical touch, is at the bottom. But I know when I feed my daughter's need for physical touch by stroking her hair, putting my hand on her back, holding her hand, giving her lots of hugs, I get more out of her because she feels more connected to me. But it's something that I really have to work hard at, because it doesn't come quite as naturally as, say, gifts, which is one of mine that's up the top, or acts of service, which is my top one. So have a think about that in terms of your children. Off the top of your head, do you know, what would you say your child's love language is in? If you remember all of those, pop it into the chat box. Okay, I think our children do a lot of wanting our attention and needing control in their life when they feel that perhaps it's out of control. And so what I encourage you to do is, when your children are seeking attention, what is your reaction? So if, for example, they know they will get a reaction from you and they will get your attention when they whack their sibling or they fight or they talk back to you, then they are going to do more of that in order to get noticed and to be heard. So how can you feed their need for attention in a different way? So can we use praise? Can we use, I'm not saying sticker charts and reward charts. I don't think that's the right kind of attention. Can you put down your phone and snuggle with them on the sofa to give them some connection points? But be very aware as a parent what you are feeding within your children. Are you feeding the behavior you don't wish to see by giving it attention, or are you feeding other things around that that actually have been done well, but we don't notice it because we just think, oh, that's what they should do, that's what they should do. Actually, children need to be acknowledged that actually that's a kind act, or that's a thoughtful act, or they've been incredibly patient. And this is where I love using these value words around acknowledgement. So thank you for your patience, thank you for your courage, thank you for your perseverance, so that they can really see and acknowledge and take on what's going on around them. So I think that's another interesting one. Children will do anything for our attention. How are you feeding their need for attention? If any of you have a default behavior for shouting when things get heightened within your home, I have a bit of a technique for that. And it works in a classroom. So if there are any teachers or pastoral leads on this call, it works in a classroom with 30 children as well. So rather than shouting, because all shouting does is, yes, your voice is heard, but it just escalates and escalates and escalates until you're on the ceiling. And so my suggestion to you is to come in with a very cross whisper. So you're coming in below the behavior rather than heightening it up. If nothing else, it helps to calm the situation down. Another thing it does is the children are like, well, they didn't respond the way I thought they were going to. This is a bit strange. They may take a pause for breath before they keep going, and you can swoop in with a, well done, I can see you've paused and thought about what's just happened then. And then you can try and move them on in a different way. But whispering is quite powerful. So try it next time if there are any shouters in the group. Just, you don't have to tell me you are, but have a go at that one. The other thing that I think is quite nice is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this 5-second rule was coined by a life coach out of the States called Mel Robbins. And she used it, nothing to do with parenting, but it works quite nicely in a parenting context when we're dealing with things that are coming up in our households. And it very simply is, you take a very deep breath, and as you breathe out, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The theory being that your emotions and your thinking brain have roughly 5 seconds before they collide. If they collide, your child or you will go back to their default behavior. And so if we can intercept it with a positive, affirming breath and giving your brain a chance to make a really informed choice, then that is going to be a better thing for you. So the 5-second rule might be something that you want to take forward. The only other thing I'm going to say as we rush to the finish line here is around listening. I think, and it's going to be specifically to do with repetition. So I so often hear from the parents I work with, or as I say, in the corporate context or whatever I'm doing, my children just don't listen to me. And I would say to you, how many times do you repeat yourself for them not to listen? Because actually, as I said, within a classroom, within a family environment, if you have trained the children to not listen the first time, then you are going to get to the 7th, 12th, 70 millionth time, and then you will lose your rag, and then your children will be like, oh, yeah, I should have listened. But actually, if you encourage first-time listening by setting them up for success, getting their eye contact, calling their name, potentially being in the same room as them, it may influence the behavior that you are seeing. So I'm going to stop it there while I give you a chance to write into the chat box one of your takeaways. I say, I've just scraped the surface of behavior. If I haven't really touched on what you wanted to hear about or anything like that, do consider booking in for a free chat with me. The link will go out with the email, or you are very welcome to ping me an email and ask me a question if you would like. But as I say, this topic is huge. Absolutely huge. And I could do a workshop on it, and I don't think I'd still cover everything that I needed to. So while you're just letting me know about your takeaways, I need to let you know that next month, I think it's the 5th of December, I have my last clinic of this term, which is all about emotions, and it'll probably weave in some bits in there around like end of term tiredness and emotions and the festive season and all that kind of stuff. So that is on the 5th of December. If you are a BBC radio listener, you will hear me on BBC Radio Leeds next Wednesday morning at 7:40 if you want to hear my delightful tones, where I'm talking about a sleep talk method which really helps with children with anxiety, with their fear, with their overwhelm. So I'm doing that on Radio Leeds. I'm also in Lloyd's next week. I don't know if I've got any Lloyd's employees on this call, so I'm giving a talk on friendship and bullying next week for Lloyd's. And yeah, so there's lots going on for me over the next couple of weeks. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm doing a masterclass on the Goulding Sleep Talk method on the 25th of November, which is a wonderful technique that just helps children deal with fear, anxiety, confidence, overwhelm, and all of that kind of stuff. So if that's something of interest to you, that will also be in the email that comes out. So let me have a look and see what some of our takeaways. Oh my goodness me, you guys have been on fire. Fantastic. So we've got all behavior is communication. Let's look at their developmental stage. Is that relevant to their behavior? Love that. Love languages seems to have hit home. It's a fun thing to do with the kids, actually, because they think it's quite fun to talk about it. So love languages, again, feeding the right ones for your children. The whisper, techniques to avoid the default behavior. Love languages, focusing on one behavior. The woodpecker analogy was really helpful. Yeah, I'm here for that. Whispering approach, gosh. Optimism of listening, love that, listening. These are so amazing. Thank you everyone for your feedback. Thank you for your time. I have gone a little bit over. Someone here just is taking a deep breath. I love that. Great. It's so important to breathe. I can share the book titles. Yep, I will put them into the email that I send out. But if you put into Amazon or into your local bookshop, 5 love languages, you will get things that come out, and they do a whole series of these. So there's love languages for families, love languages for neurodivergence. They've got love languages for couples. It's a whole empire. So there's lots out there on that. Do I have a vlog or a blog on this topic on behavior? Whoever asked that one specifically, yes, in fact, someone messaged me yesterday about behavior stuff. There's one on my blog about discipline and consequences, which we have not even touched the surface of. So there is one about natural, planned, and logical consequences. There are lots of blogs on my website, so please just go and have a look. But I love the idea of a vlog, actually. Thank you for planting that seed. I might go down that route. But if you want something more specific, let me know, because I'm up for doing most things. Default behavior, the 54321, love that. Lloyd's, Leeds, or Halifax? I go online, Lloyd's person who's just asked me that question. So it's an online talk that I'm giving with the Family Matters Network. So it doesn't matter where you are, Leeds or Halifax, it's an online thing, so you can do that. Likewise, if you work for a business, an organization, a school, a corporation who wants to chat to me about having me in, let me know. Can we have your information about future talks on email? Yes, you can. I will put all of that out to you. Thank you very much. Yeah, there you go. You can have a podcast sort of interactive. Yeah, you're right. I could. I'm a one-woman band and I have so many great ideas, but at the end of the day, I've got to keep within my energy levels. But I love the idea of a podcast, so thank you for that suggestion. So thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for coming. As I say, if you're listening to the replay or you want to ask me some questions, just reach out. I'm here. Yeah. Or maybe I'll see you next month in the emotions clinic or something else I am running. So I'm going to stop the recording.